Okay, let's make a start. Thanks everyone again for joining SAP for everyone. I hope you find the session useful today. My name is Darron Walton, and I'm with DVW Analytics, and we work very closely with Alteryx and have a deep knowledge of SAP. So the reason why we're here today is to show you how Alteryx and SAP data can be used together to great effect. I'm also joined on the call by Omar Pennacchio from Alteryx and also Shri Yadav from DVW. So there'll be three voices you'll hear at various points during our call. Okay, so let's kick off with the agenda. So firstly, we're not going to hit you with loads of slides because we want to get into the meat of the presentation, which will be a demonstration of Alteryx and the DVW Analytics connectors. But I'll ask Omar to provide a brief introduction of Alteryx just now, and then I'll provide a brief introduction to DVW Analytics before we hand over to Sky, who will run the demonstration. So Omar, would you like to say a few words for audience?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Darren. Hello to everyone, and thank you for taking your time. I'd like to spend the next 5 minutes or so to give you just an introduction about how Alteryx, give you an overview of Alteryx and the capabilities we provide. So we have plenty of time as well at the end for questions, so feel free to go and put the questions in the according box so we can take them up and answer them. So as an intro, Alteryx is a software company that delivers an end-to-end analytics platform that helps companies. Maybe you can switch back to the other slide, Darren, please. Thank you. So it's an end-to-end platform that helps companies to turn their data into actionable insights, which in turn improves their business. So we are known mainly for data prep and blend, help shape and analyze different types of data so it can be easily dashboarded or visualized. But we extend beyond this prep and blend into a full edge end-to-end platform. As you can see here, we became a public software company in March 2017, so our corporate headquarters is in California. But I think the most important thing here is basically that we have key technology strategic alliance partners, Microsoft, Tableau, and AWS. So you can see we are part of the analytics market. And you can see as well that, and this is the topic of today, that we have partners like DVW, and we have really valuable connectors to SAP. So we grab the data, which is highly important, highly strategic within companies, and we can work with all this data in a very easy, in a completely new way. Darren, maybe you can switch to the next slide. I would like to show you a little bit the capability of Alteryx. So we are known as a self-service data analytics management platform, and you can see it always starts, we think in workflows. So we always start from the left to the right. We start with taking some data as an input, and at the end we are writing the data to an output. And in between, you can choose what happens with the data. So we are completely agnostic to any kind of input and any kind of output. We try to attach any kind of source, and the source could be structured data, unstructured data, it could be data in the cloud, on-premise, it could be just some Excel documents or some XML documents, or it can be data from SAP. So all these systems we try to attach, we can combine, you can prepare, you can blend all the data, you can enrich it by third parties. So we have company data from Dun & Bradstreet, we have demographic data from TomTom or from Experian, or just spatial data from TomTom, and all these will be then in the middle part analyzed. The analysis is done completely code-free, code-friendly. It can be automated, and all these is quite easy to learn and easy to understand. All that will be shared to your BI provider. It might be Tableau, Click, Power BI, but it even can be shared just to any kind of source, what we can attach. Usually, if we can read something, we can usually as well write to it. So we are completely open and free to that. So let me give the ball back to Darren so you can continue with giving a little bit more insights how we connect to SAP and how you can do that with Alteryx.
Thanks, Omar. So the objective of DVW is to provide the easiest, fastest way possible to get data out of pretty much any SAP system and utilize it within the Alteryx framework. So To that end, we work with, as I mentioned, pretty much all of your core SAP systems. This is just a partial list here. Common systems would be SAP BW or any of the other variants of BW, be it BW on HANA, BW for HANA. We'll work with your core SAP ECC system, also known as SAP ERP, and now it's gradually migrating onto an SAP S4HANA kind of environment. If any of you work with the industry-specific solutions, IS Oil, for example, IS Utilities, our connectors will also work with those products as well. So we have very, very extensive access to pretty much all of the SAP systems that you're likely to have within your estate. Just to highlight a few of our particular features that I think could be relevant to you as an audience. Firstly, our software has a very, very light footprint. It's installed as a plugin into Alteryx, so it doesn't require any additional hardware to run. Also, we don't require any installation on your SAP environment for our core tools, and what we'll focus on today is talking about our core tools. So the core tools that we'll show you require no installation at all on your SAP environment. The benefit of this is it means that we can allow you to be up and running very, very quickly. You'll see when they do the demonstration that our tools work seamlessly with all the various Alteryx tools. So they look, they feel, they behave in a similar way to the various tools that Alteryx provide to you. We have capability that allow you to schedule workflows, so we can extract data, schedule the extracted data from SAP into Alteryx, either using Alteryx Server or making use of the Alteryx Scheduler. We don't require any staging of data, so the data itself is pulled directly from the underlying SAP system into Alteryx, so there's no intermediary there. So from a governance perspective, that's quite important. Also, many of you will work within organizations where you don't have a single SAP system. You're likely to have multiple different SAP systems, and what we allow you to do, again, with our tools is to pull data from multiple different SAP systems into a single Alteryx workflow. Quite critically, we respect the underlying authorizations of any user. So as a user of SAP, I can only access that data that I'm authorized to access within the system. Okay, so I can't go rogue, I can't download the whole database, I can only access that data or execute those queries that I'm authorized to execute within the particular system. We have various tools that and elements within our tool set that allow us to optimize the extracted data from systems. So there are inherent limits built into any SAP system, and these are in place for a reason, to make sure that no single user takes too much of the processing power of a system. But what we allow you to do is to say, listen, I'd like all the data in a particular table, all the data in a particular query, and no matter how large that is, we will make multiple requests to the back-end SAP system to get data for you in a single request, although behind the scenes we may make multiple requests to that SAP system. We have features that will support delta loads. So if you want to get say, okay, show me only the data that's been updated since yesterday, we have mechanisms to enable that as well. Quite importantly, we make use of standard SAP APIs in our core tools. So these are APIs that SAP provide to vendors like DVW to develop enhancements to the product set. And if you do connect to SAP today using single sign-on, we can support that as well. So we can, again, work within the governance framework that you have in place. And just a couple of points before I hand over to Sky to highlight three of the key tools we'll probably show you today. Firstly, if I want to get data from an SAP table or an SAP table view, so this would be, if you're familiar at all with SAP, this would be analogous to using the data browser transaction in SAP, transaction SE16, SE16N, that may ring bells for some of you. Then we have our SAP table data tool. Similarly, if you've already made the investment in SAP HANA or S4HANA and you've developed core data service views, then our table data tool will also extract data via HANA core data service or CDS views as well. From a BW side, any queries or query views that you've defined within your systems and that you have access to, we can allow you to execute those directly from within Alteryx. And similarly, any SAP BW info providers as well. So these are be like your info objects, info cubes that people often refer to. And then finally, quite a large number of SAP customers still make use of the SAP query that would exist, say, with a core SAP ECC system. And again, using transaction codes, SQVI would be a common one. So we also have the ability to extract data directly from SAP queries in your SAP system. So that's kind of a highlight. We do have other tools as well that work within the same tool set. These are tools I think are most important to show you in the session today. Okay, so introduction out of the way. Let me hand over to Sky, who will demonstrate the solution for you with Alteryx. Let me just make you presenter if I can, Sky.
Sure, thank you, Darren. Excellent, no damage done. Thank you very much, Darren and Omar. Okay, so I will start by going on to this section, Alteryx connector for SAP, and then I'll drag and drop the SAP logon tool to connect to one of my systems that I have had previously configured, so we can actually read your SAP system details directly from your SAP logon pad, which is this screen here that you might be aware of or you might have worked with. Otherwise, we can manually help you configure these system details. Once I select my system, I enter my username and password if I'm connecting via a username and password based system. Otherwise, we can also deal with single sign-ons as well. So as you can see, that ping servers actually gave me a successful message. I now need to drag and drop the BW read tool onto the canvas. So we will first connect to the BW system. We'll show you how to get data from a BW query or an info provider, and then we'll focus on some of the advanced options within Alteryx, how to publish the data to Tableau or Power BI, and so on and so forth. So I will click on the search button first to search for a BW query. So as you can see here, this is my history. These are some of the objects that I have been working with. So these are your BAX queries, as you can call them, or BW queries, but this is all about BI BW system. This is not the ECC system. So I can either select a query directly that is visible here, or I can switch on, or I can search on for more queries in this search box. So I can say G star demo, find anything that matches that criteria, and once I see my output there, I can switch on key and text. So once I know what query I want to work with, I'll select that query, press the OK button, and at this stage we'll make a request to the SAP system to bring all the metadata out for that query. So as you can see here on the filters and variables section, these are the two mandatory variables. They are quite bright and red, so that means we are supposed to provide some values before we can ask for data from SAP system. On the selections tab, you can see all the characteristics and all the fields that are currently selected. So that means if I run this workflow as is now, these are the only fields that I will see in my output, plus then the key figures, including some calculated key figures, and so on and so forth. So let's first of all satisfy the need for this query for the mandatory parameters. So by right clicking, I am saying I want to put in a few details, and I'll select my operator here greater than this first value. Click on the plus button to add that value, and OK. So first line satisfied there. Second line, I will click on the edit button again, and we do have some demo data for year 2012, and as soon as I clicked on that second line there, all the mandatory parameters are now populated and the red edges are now disappeared or are gone. So that means all the mandatory parameters are now populated. So we don't need to do anything else here. I will simply right click on this tool and add a browse tool after the D output. So D represents data, T represents master data text, H represents hierarchies. So I'll in a minute show you how to get that, or this piece of information and the hierarchies as well. So let's first of all run this query and see some data out from the SAP system. So we are now making one request to the SAP system to get all the data in flat tabular format. So as you can see, all the way starting from 0 cal day to Z product are my characteristics that are part of rows and columns in that query definition. So this is the context on which we are operating, and then on the right hand side we got the actual numbers. So for example, net value 1, and so on and so forth. So these are the true numbers or key figures or measures as you call them. We also represent the dimensions against those numerical fields. So if you want to switch them off, you have the controls within the tool to actually do so. Now let's go back here and show you what else can you do. So in this case, imagine this was a very large query, and if you wanted to take control of slicing the data request into smaller chunks, you can do so. So I have a pre-prepared workflow that I will show you. But before I do that, I promise you that I'll show you how to get the master data text and the hierarchy. So let's focus on that for a second. So let's imagine that you want to get the partner reason text as a separate output so that you have that information cached for some other purposes. Or you can also do a join between the partner reason key coming from this output and the partner reason text coming from the T output. So for larger queries, anything more than 500,000 and so on and so forth, you can actually combine the data that way. Alteryx is really efficient in joining that data upfront. So rather than forcing your SAP system to do all that heavy joins in the database, you can bring the master data out separately and the actual output of your query separately and combine that data here. So you use Alteryx wisely. So in this case, I'm selecting this parent node called text, and by doing that, I will now bring the text output for my parent reason or partner reason. And then also let's do that thing for my product as well. So I'm selecting text here for product. Now if I put a T output here, that will give me two info objects and their master data text. Let's also focus on the hierarchies for a moment. So my product field has got some hierarchies, and I'm going to select more than one hierarchy for my output. So what do I want to do with that? I will show you in a minute once the data comes out. So I'm going to select these two hierarchies, and I'm going to keep the hierarchy parent levels to level 5. And if I now put an output to the H tool here and click on the run button, so this time we will not only get the actual data of the query, but we'll also get the master data text for two of the fields we selected and two hierarchies for the product field. So all that data will be in tabular format. You can slice and dice that data right here in Alteryx, or you can publish that onto your visualization layer and then you can use that there as well. So first of all, let's look at the hierarchical output. So in this case, we have the info object called product, and against that product we selected two hierarchies. That's why you see two different hierarchy IDs, therefore two different names. And starting from level 1, you got all the parent-child relationships. So let's focus on for a moment on the leaf node column here. This leaf node column here represents the actual product key. So all the product keys that come out of the DVW query tool, out of the D output, also match this leaf node. So this could be a good join criteria. But if you focus on any of the values that you see, this, for example, this short service machine is actually found at level number 5, and it has a parent in level number 4, and that had a parent in level number 3, and so on and so forth, and eventually will reach to the top level root node there. So you can see the entire hierarchy is flattened in a flat tabular format, and you can pick any of these levels to create your joins, to actually aggregate data and to represent the data in different format, either here in Tableau or in your visualization layer. Okay, so the next, let's focus on the master data text. So in this case, we have the partner reason field, and then we have the Z product field. So there are two different fields, and against those fields we have the internal key, which is the technical key. Sometimes these are really simple fields, sometimes you'll have complicated fields, compounded fields, and for them the internal and external formats might differ depending on the complexity of that field. And then you get the short, medium, and large text, as you can imagine. And then combining the data from this output with the D output or the actual query output, you can now combine the data on one of these fields. That will give you not only the keys for that field, but also the short, medium, and large text. Similarly, for the product field, we have product keys and the product text as well. So this is how you can dump all the master data if you want to, and you can cache that, you can use that later for different purposes. So that's how the DVW query tool works in simplest form. So let's just focus on a couple of advanced scenarios. So for example, in this case, let's say if you had a very large data volume to deal with, so rather than making just a single request for a transaction type greater than hash, as we did in the previous case, what we are doing here is, if you look, we selected InList as my operator, and I said these are the only 3 transaction types that I am really interested in, and I'm going to select this split checkbox here. By doing so, we will now make multiple requests on your behalf to the SAP system. So from your perspective, you are just running a single workflow, However, the SAP system is going to receive multiple requests, one after another. First request will go for this line for year 2012, then for this line, and then for year 2012, and so on and so forth. Eventually, you will get all the data combined into a single output, so you don't have to worry about joining that data together. Similarly, you can also apply filters on any of the characteristics as your secondary drill down filters. So for example, on the calendar month, I decided to apply a filter because I do not want data for the entire year 2012. So I simply right-clicked here and I said I want to list a couple of calendar months from here, and I also want to apply a split on that field. So as you can see here in this case, I said I want to get data for calendar month 04 and 05, and that is how now I will get 3 multiplied by 2, 6 requests hitting the SAP system. So once for this line we'll go for calendar month 04, then for the same line we'll go for calendar month 05 while keeping the year 2012 in the context, and then we will move on to the next line. So we have provided you enough features to make sure that you work with your SAP system and you get the best performance out of it, and you can serve really large queries by this mechanism. Similarly, you might have a requirement to actually pass this filter criteria dynamically. So rather than hard coding these values, which is not truly automation, so if you want to do true automation, you can actually bring this information dynamically. So you can create your workflow as a plug-and-play device, so you can actually bring in a different input to it and you can get a different output from it. So what I'm doing is by right-clicking on any of these lines, you can say copy headers and values. I will take the entire line so that I can get the format of the field that this connector understands and put that in an Excel file. So that Excel file is sitting on my desktop. So if I just quickly open this and show you. So there you go. So we are saying we have a variable called zcal year and we want to replace the value. Instead of 2012, we want to bring data for 2015. And also we want data for calendar months starting between 06 and 08. And then if I now close this file, go back to Alteryx, that same file is sitting here. So if you click on this input data tool, which is, by the way, Alteryx is one of the purest tools that you can use, really powerful. So you can see here at the top, I am actually reading that file from my desktop. And by reading that file, I got those 2 lines. And now I am mapping that data into the lower end of my SAP BW read tool, and by doing so I am satisfying the need of these fields. So the connector only understands these fields, so you bring them from whatever source you like, from an Excel file, from a tab or a text file. We do not care as long as you can bring these fields. At runtime we will then replace the values that we find here, like for like values. So now we have the transaction type, calendar year and calendar month coming from this Excel file, and we'll take that filter criteria at runtime. So this is how you can actually bring the dynamic information, and you can change the output of your workflow just by changing the input. Similarly, when the data goes out, I have now chosen an output tool here. So the output data tool that you see here, I dragged onto the canvas and I said I want to create a Tableau output. So again, very powerful tool, and it has got a huge number of options. So in this case, I selected the TDE option, which is the Tableau option, or the Hyper. So these are Tableau files. I can also do an Excel-based dump as well, or you can also do something like this. So for example, you can say I want to publish to Tableau, directly to Tableau server. So you can actually use that tool to drag onto the canvas, and you can combine the output of that D output from there. And you can provide your credentials as long as, and also the server details. If I just quickly drag this tool, there we go. So you can provide your server URL, you can provide your username and password and any existing connections, or you can create a new connection, and that way output of my BW query coming from the SAP system will be directly published onto the Tableau server, and your Tableau will then pick that job up, and all of a sudden you have your data coming from SAP directly into your Tableau environment. So again, there are a huge number of options. You can actually dump that data to Tableau, Power BI, or really simple Excel files, or even Alteryx has a very strong proprietary format which is called YXDB file. So you can also select this file. So really huge volumes of data can be stored in YXDB files, and I'm talking about millions and millions of records, and it's really quick to read that data back within Alteryx. So if you have a requirement like that, you can choose that as well. Okay, so that's the option with the BW read tool. I will now focus on the table tool. So let me make sure that we delete these tools from the canvas, and we start by dragging the logo on tool again. In this logo on tool, you can add as many systems as you like. So this time I'm going to connect to our SAP HANA system, and we will focus on one of the popular tables from SAP system, ECC system, called BKPF. So I'll click on the search button. I'll type in the table name, click on the search button, get my table back, and against that table now we have all the metadata. So that includes your primary key fields as well as your data fields. There we go. So these are the regular fields, as you can see. Let me switch on the key and text so that you can see the technical names. So these fields will include the standard SAP fields and any custom fields that you might have added on top. In this case, these are the fields that make up the primary key of this table, and also we show you quite transparently the secondary indexes. So for example, if you are applying a filter on such a large table such as BKPF, and if you don't want to apply a filter on primary keys, or you might not have the filter criteria handy, then you can choose one of the secondary index filters, and by doing so you will actually increase the performance of your SAP system significantly. So basically we give as much transparency as possible to the end user so that you can work with your SAP system. Okay, so in this case I will select a few of the fields from here, and I will leave the max records 200. So now this is pretty much equivalent to your SE16 or data browser functionality within the SAP system. So you can in many ways consider our tools as an alternate interface to the SAP system. And there we go. So that's our first 200 records from that table. These are the fields I had selected, so it's all clean and tabular data. Now let's go back to this tool for a moment and let's understand some of the advanced options. So let's say I want to apply a filter on this table on fiscal year. So I'll right click here and say get me data for year 2019. And I also want to apply a filter on company code. And I believe we do have some data in this system for company code 1710. So I'll just simply type that 1710 in here, even if I don't want to search for it. And that line is added there as well. So this is how you can apply filters. So now let's say against that filter criteria, I want to grab everything from this table. So even if there are 100 million records in this table, now my data will be only for my selection criteria. So imagine that for that selection criteria, we still have got about 500,000 records. So in that case, what I will do is I'll change this packet size, which is there to help you. So we will make multiple requests on your behalf every time asking for 1 million records at a time, or 100,000 records at a time. So in our example of 500,000 records for our selection criteria, we will go to the SAP system 5 times, and each time we'll ask for only 100,000 records. So that way, again, we go really lightweight on your SAP system and grab all the data that you need eventually out of the SAP system. So that's how you apply filters here. Similarly, you can actually apply dynamic input into this tool, and you can also apply split options as well. So for example, instead of just saying one company code at a time, if I want to get data from multiple company codes, I can simply do the following. I can say in list, and I have multiple company codes in mind that I want to get data for. I can switch on this split checkbox and click OK, and now we will make one request per line, and if for that line we still have got data more than 100,000, then we'll keep on going just for that line to the database, get all the data out before moving on to the next line, and so on and so forth. Now similarly, as BW read tool, you can push in the dynamic input into this tool, so you can actually bring some filter criteria. For example, you can have some company code values that your colleague gives you, or you have a requirement for a project that determines the company codes for you, and you would like to feed that information into this tool so that you can actually make a dynamic workflow. You can also use one of our table tools to feed the data into this tool. So a very typical example within the SAP ECC system is usually to get the header data mapped into the item data. So BKPF is one of those header tables. If you want to map the data with the item table, then that is BSAG table. Similar examples could be CDHDR, CDPOS, EKKO, EKPO table, LFA1, LFB1 tables, and a number of other examples. So I do have a pre-prepared workflow that I will open for you. So let's just quickly open that workflow from here. There we go. So in this case, my BKPF table, as I showed you, is my first table, which gives me the filter values. Well, actually in this case, let's say we have 1,000 records against my filter criteria. Now I want to get from the item table, which is the BSAG table, only records that match the output of my first table. So the common fields between these two tables, for those who do not know these tables very well, these are the three common fields for these two tables. So I want to pass in the dynamic information, especially the accounting document number from here into my second table. So all my second table needs, as we saw earlier in the dynamic input tab, these are the 6 fields that our table tool likes to be able to create a dynamic filter, and that we are achieving via this formula tool. Again, this is an Alteryx tool, really powerful tool. You can actually use this to create your imagination is your limit what you can do with this tool. So we are targeting a field called bell number in my table here, and we want to include everything which is equal to the low value, which is the bell number field coming from my first table. So you can now see that Alteryx has provided me a platform to actually bring a value dynamically from a tool which appears before this formula tool. And we don't want to pass anything in the high, but if you want to, we can do, and we don't want to apply any splits. So that means we are going to apply all the values that will come out of this table as a single input into this tool. And by putting this unique tool, I am making sure that I delete any of the duplicate records, and that information goes into this tool, which is pretty much like, for example, if I would have had created a filter directly onto this table. So if I right click here and select this document number and click OK, and this line here is applied at runtime. But imagine that instead of this single line, we will have a huge load of lines there with the document number that will be created invisibly at a runtime, and those values will be supplied by my first table. So that's all we are achieving by this dynamic selection there. So the idea is that you get data from your first table that you use as a filter criteria to feed into your next table, and that is how you can get the data based on selection criteria. So this is not exactly an in-database join, but it also is not bringing all the data out from BSAG and BKPF and then doing the join. So we are literally cherry picking those values that we truly need. And in this case, once the data comes out of my BSAG, I can join the data with the BKPF. Again, here is a join tool from Alteryx. You can have all kinds of options within here. So I have selected what are the fields that are common between these two tools, and also I'm selecting the inner join. So you can also have an R join, which is your right output join, and your left join if you want to see that output as well. Okay, so that's using a single input. Now I'll just quickly also open a multiple field-based option for you. In this case, you can actually select multiple fields that feed into this tool. So remember, we had these 3 fields which were common between the two tools, and in this time I'm actually unioning them before. Again, a very powerful Alteryx tool which unions the data between multiple tools and feeds into my BSAG tool. So you can see that we can actually prep the data in more than one way. So it's, again, as I said, your imagination is your limit. Alteryx has really powerful, simple tools which can actually do a neat job for you, a specific job for you. So in this case, we are using 3 formula tools targeting 3 different fields in my BSAG table. Then I'm actually combining that data on the union tool, passing that through my filter tool. That data goes into my BSAG tool, and there are 3 filters: company code, accounting document, and fiscal year being applied at runtime, and out comes the data. And the final outcome of this workflow, so let me just close these simple workflows, and I'll now show you the really complex workflow. So we'll now go to my specialist workflow, and in this case Alteryx again champions the macro-based approach. So Alteryx has capability to actually create macros. So imagine that my first table, which is my BKPF table, gives me 50,000 document numbers that I now need to pass into my second table. If you remember, we had the BSAG table. So to be able to pass such a large volume, we need to actually help the SAP system, because the underlying database cannot handle such a large SQL. So we have a specialist tool that comes a part of your license is called ACS filter tool, and that says out of all the document numbers or the output coming from my first tool, I will actually divide that into batches of 4,000 each. So just take an example of, let's say, even 50,000. In that case, we will have roughly 13 iterations to make. We are going to target these 3 fields in my second table, and this is the macro that Alteryx provides. So basically you can design complex macros within Alteryx, and behind this macro, if I go deep inside it, you will find that we have a table hiding here, which is my BSAG table. So this was the second table in our earlier workflows, if you remember, and all it needs to be satisfied is using this macro input tool. We will bring it the name, the selection, the operator, low key, high key, and split fields. So it needs some kind of sample to say, okay, what will you provide me at runtime? Well, I'll provide you the field name that you want to apply a filter against. I will give you the value of it. I will give you the selection and the operator against it, and I'll also tell you what group number are we executing. So now this macro here has a gateway, an input gateway, which is this tool. So this input gateway will bring me the filter criteria at runtime, and that filter criteria will be fed into this SAP table tool, and it will give me the output using this output tool. Again, all this information is available, all these tools are available under the interface section of Alteryx. So this is the tool we are using for bringing the data in. This is the tool that we are using exporting the data out of this tool. So now this is a complete factory. We call it batch macro, and we'll call that batch macro right here. So we'll pass 4,000 documents at a time from this tool, which is controlling how many data is going per batch into this tool. Output of that will be out here, and again you can join the data between the BKPF table, your header table, and your item table right here. So as you can see, Alteryx and our connector, ACS connector, are working seamlessly to get data, really large volumes of data, and these are some of the typical examples like BKPF and BSAG in an ECC system in terms of the volume, so you can get all your data out nicely, and that's your final output. Okay, so that's the table tool. I hope you got a gist of what it can do. We also have these sample workflows available, so if you will register for trial, we can actually hand over these sample workflows to you in case if you want to use them. Now let me also talk about a couple of other tools that Darren mentioned. So one of those tools is the reports tool. So in this case, if you want to hit your SAP ECC system, then obviously table tool is one of the ways that you can go, really powerful. But we also have a tool called SAP reports tool. In this case, you can type in the transaction codes or the ABAP report name, and that does not matter whether these transaction codes and ABAP reports are custom or SAP specific. So you may have designed them in-house, or they may have been supplied by SAP. So in this case, I'm looking for a financial transaction code called FBL3N, really powerful accounting transaction code. And against that transaction code, once I selected the underlying program name, I got a list of variants. And these are the screen variants that you typically design within the SAP system. So when you have the layout, for example, this is my output here, and this is how the selection screen looks like in real time in SAP. So this is exactly the same screen that you are seeing on the other side. So you can save your filter criteria here as a variant. So for example, if I press the save button, you see this, this variant name appearing in a second. And that's the same variant that we are picking on the other side in Alteryx. So you don't even have to worry about populating the screen fields, etc. So you see this is a screen variant that actually saves your filter criteria within the SAP system, and then you can pick that report variant on this side or screen variant on this side. So you don't even have to populate any of these fields if you do not wish to. By all means you can do, or you can also bring this criteria dynamically. So for example, one of your table tools gives you the company code, all your master data. You feed that master data into this tool, and then you get data only for those selected company codes. You can again design really powerful complex workflows. But in this case, I have decided to select the report variant, which is already available in the SAP system, and I'm saying my output header row actually starts at line number 6 and the data row starts at line number 8. That I know by experience, or you can just sample the workflow by pressing this preview button, and that will give you the idea. And now the output of this tool looks exactly same as you would see within the SAP system. So that's how you can get data from the SAP ABAP reports or T codes. And last thing to quickly mention is the SAP query tool. So if you read this information here. So if you are currently using SQVI transaction or SQ01, 012 or 03 transactions where the joins have already been done for you within the SAP ECC system, so multiple tables have been joined and a platform has been created for you. In that case, you don't have to use the table tool to create those joins directly in here. If that facility is available, if you are allowed to do this in your SAP system, you can click on the search button and you can reach to your SAP query. And once you will select that query, you can see that this query was made up of this functional area, which is against this user group. And once you select it, you will see the fields coming from different tables. In this case, as you can see, we have the BUT000. If I switch on the key and text here, so that's my first table, which is the master table for customers within the CRM system. And then here is the address table for that system. So now if you apply the filter conditions on this selection screen here, so depending on whether these filter conditions have been exposed by your SAP team, you should be able to apply those filters here. And the output of this tool again looks really simple. So we got the data from first table all the way up to, say, here. And then after that, my business partner address data starts. So that join has already been done within the SAP system. SAP system knows the definition of it. And in this case, you are pushing your joins, etc., directly within the database system. So you do not have to worry about it. So if you are allowed to do that, then you can actually get that data out directly within the Alteryx application.